Peter O'Neill, thanks for joining us. The underlying dispute that led to the riots was over a $120 shortfall in the first pay round for public servants this year, which prompted a police strike. The government says that it was just an administrative stuff-up, that somebody forgot to put in the tax-free threshold in pay packets. You don't seem to believe that.
Well, everybody in Papua New Guinea don't seem to believe that, and not only me. But we all know that in the last budget that was passed in November 2023, there were certain changes to the tax regime that governs the salaries and wages tax. And part of that changes were now started to be implemented in 2024. Of course, the government is finding excuses, but it really needs to get back to Parliament and make those changes to try and assist Papua New Guineans who are struggling to put food on the table.
Well, if it was a stuff-up, as the government says, and it's corrected in the next pay slips that people get, does the issue go away?
As I said, no one in the country believes them. And unfortunately, this situation where $120 plus, as you say, of the salaries that were missed out by public servants is quite a significant amount of money for average Papua New Guinean families. And that is enough for them to buy basic goods so that they can feed their families. And this is about cost of living pressures that Papua New Guinean families are facing today. And as a result of the frustrations that it has been building up because of lack of income, lack of employment, huge unemployment problem in the country, and huge social issues in the country has led to this. And as a result, we had an unfortunate situation of law and order issue and looting and violence in the country.
There have been suggestions in PNG, including from Prime Minister Marape, that there was an organised, possibly political element to the rioting and looting. Was he talking about you?
Well, Mr. Marape needs to check his own thinking. Nobody can organise mums and dads, struggling mothers and dads who are going into shops as a result of security forces and both the police and the army withdrawing, attending to their work and their services, has resulted into this looting. He has got to produce evidence that there was some political influence over it. But you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. One can imagine how one can organize that kind of looting and violence for political purposes.
So to clarify, were you in any way involved in organising those riots?
Absolutely not.
You've questioned the use of Australian taxpayer funds to support Mr Marape's government. What exactly is your allegation?
Well, you know, my government and, of course, the government before that of Somalia government, the Australian government has never supported direct funding to our budget. Without this direct funding has now been given to Marape over the last few years, started from Scott Morrison government to now Albanese government, without any strings attached. We have a huge corruption problem in this country, and of course the mismanagement of public funds in the country. As a result of that, of course, the funds that are given by Australian taxpayers are used for political purposes and mismanaged in the country. And the evidence is very clear by many instances, and one, for example, is that recently some of the contractors of the cronies of the government were paid large sums of money at a very early stage of the budget process this year.
With respect, though, Mr O'Neill, those funds were loans which started during the period of COVID, and as far as the strings attached were concerned, they were done in conjunction with the IMF, which, as I understand it, is monitoring the use of those funds. So how does that stack up with the claims that it's just being funnelled into cronies?
Even if they were loans, they are given to the government to use it to support the budget. And that means that they can expend the money at their pleasure. It is not tied to a project or infrastructure development or a hospital or school. And this is where the problem is, that there are loans given without any conditions. And the government of Papua New Guinea, especially Marape, is spending money for political purposes. And I don't think that the Australian taxpayer wants that to happen in this country.
So if you were Prime Minister again, would you stop receiving those sorts of funds, or you would not seek any further funds of that nature?
I have always been a proponent of encouraging Australia to set up a development fund, and from what I understand, they have done so now, and I'm very pleased with that. We will certainly, of course, borrow from that fund, but it must be tied to projects. It's not going to be taken up by government, where government can spend it at its pleasure, where it's unaccounted for.
There's an 18-month grace period after an election preventing a vote of no confidence in PNG. In Mr Marape's case, that expires next month. Would you be pushing for a no confidence vote? And whoever pushes one, would you put yourself forward as a leader?
Well, those options are available and provided for by the Constitution that gives us an ability to have checks and balance in our political process. But the vote of no confidence is a matter in which the Parliament can move. And of course, that grace period expires on the 9th of February, and Parliament resumes on the 13th of February, and it's entirely up to the leaders. Whether I put my hand up as an alternate Prime Minister or not, it's up to the members of Parliament, and we will continue to have those discussions.
Well, you're facing criminal charges over the Royal Commission findings. You gave false evidence over a multi-million-dollar government loan loss on an investment deal. Would this hinder your chances of returning to the Prime Ministership?
Well, as you know, that the government has spent millions and millions, I think it's over 50 million kina worth of funds to try and put up a commission of inquiry. Largely the commissioners and largely controlled by Australian professionals who have carried out very extensive research and, of course, conducted the commission of inquiry, which found nothing wrong with the loan arrangements that we got from UBS to fund a purchase of shares in a publicly listed Australian company. Now, the reference you're making to criminal charges, of course, since leaving the Prime Minister's office in July in 2019, I have been subject of many charges, and I have, in fact, won every one of them. There is no merit to the criminal charges. It is politically motivated, and I intend to defend myself, which I'm doing so in court. So I'm a great believer in our judiciary system, and they will make the right decisions after the court hearing.
Peter O'Neill, thank you so much for speaking to us tonight.
No problem. Thank you, Laura, and thank you for the interview. Thank you.
A lot of people do say, and I want to ask you this, that you did spend a lot of money in infrastructure, on APEC, on a lot of other things, and of course the returns are going to take some time before we realize it. Did you spend a lot of money, and was it worth it? Can you clarify that a bit?
Over 8 years, on average of say 2 billion kina we borrowed to invest in infrastructure in the country. Now, when you go to places like Lae used to be a portal city. We have cemented the city. We have built a big international port. We are now, through with the Australian government's agreement on refugees, we are building the biggest hospital, rebuilding the Enga hospital there. We have started the 4-lane from the city all the way to the airport so we can have access to people coming through. And then, of course, we've got the airport through ADB funding, a loan that we've got to build a new terminal and a new expansion. So that's just an example in Lae. Mm-hmm. We are doing that in Wewak. We are doing that in Mount Hagen. We are doing that in Vanimore. We are doing that in Manus. We are doing that in Oro province. We are doing it in Wewak. We are doing it across the country in every province, every provincial town, the city that we are trying to rebuild so that these basic services are flowing. These are economic infrastructures. We are rebuilding the Highlands Highway, which is 80% complete now. And you can now drive on a very comfortable road from Mount Hagen to Lae. These are real things that are there before us. We're building hospitals, we're building schools. These are infrastructures that will save us for another 20 or 30 years. It is worth spending that. And not only that, it generates revenue because the businesses will start booming. We can deliver more services like health and education, productivity increases. So it's a whole range of issues that relate to the infrastructure that we build. So, I make no apology that I did that. But it's an option is we leave it as it is and we run down roads and get frustrated and swear at the member and why is the member not doing this. We try to address that. This has been 40 years in the making. John, when we have 40 years of neglect and you're trying to do it in 7 years, of course people sit up and say, what's going on? And they accuse you of all kinds of things. I don't mind, being accused about things, but at least I get a thing done.
Next on Your Vote Matters.
Many of the SOEs are not functioning because they can see the head of the organization is a wrong person who's occupying that.
Every blow one man, maybe community extreme. Now you may bugger up and sing number you may. Also, in a place, move forward despite you may undergo services up because leadership may be wrong. So me now, I'm a master also you play boom one time. Lord, develop him candid. Lord, make him sure some old man marry now, beginning especially to service only truly deserving. People of PNC, you bless our way. The 2017 elections, old man Mary La Papua New Guinea giving me 29 member. One from Banasa and Mitupla, one Pablo Tupla, where me play on a forming government. Me play on a forming government, but 2019, government play me only work law. Karen Gilman Toto Gram, my jealous passing around, power hungry man, work la shake up, in position. Now work him na me play. So I'm alright. And most of the line here come inside last line, but you me yet. La PNC na me bla toga right me bla resign. You bla try na me bla looking na me to bla Alfred giving government all this time. Time only swing government pennies only bagara me to bla. Me bla looking at some all this bla man con man. Almost an ablo toto ball or gear man. Where almost a respecting man who is supporting all. Also now looking government you me the last 3 years. And you go back up because you know what blessing the government. Also, in the time only talk also only Rasin PNC, only Rasin. After Banas and Assembly Minister, you may go outside the government because only thing of some PNC but group never disappear. Now got no plenty post for PNC stop yet. After Marasi Mitla, 1 2 just not post for PNC. Maybe I got 17 member. 17 members outside stop one time, give me opposition. Now give me go inside the election one time. Bloody line in Lucy, me go, I'm alright. But Mipla is not strong now, get a man away. Inside the country, Mipla no man will be on him. Money, Mipla no man will be on him. Talk grease, Mipla no man will be on him position. Also, Mipla is up strong, will make him sure. Also, you mix him government back. Look, current development, come inside the 1-1. Place you got land local Papua New Guinea. Me round over up, we can talk him you straight. Me looking plenty up, you go bagara bugata. Plenty up where old beginnings now go to school and before old schooling now closed. Now beginning you no got uniform or beginning no got school fee, no buy school fee, no got up, place you bagara no beginning no sirango. Now that's all because of elections only current free education come back. But only no serious, only no got believe education, only government that's all because only working popular politics. PNC law 8 years you ban school fee law over the beginning inside the country, 2.2 million or beginning. 2.2 million or beginning me buying school fee.